Welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be around the league updates from Week 1 in the NFL. Before we jump in today, please make sure you press that follow button right here on Spotify. Rate the podcast for me, as well as check out my Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron. So a little rundown of what today's episode is going to look like. First, I'm going to give my recap and my thoughts on Week 1, every game around the league. And then we're going to move into the him performance of the week. And then a little bit of a Week 2 preview. Nothing, not diving into everything too much, just because there's a lot going on, a lot of games. And this episode is releasing on a Wednesday. So a lot of things are going to develop and change. So I'll just give you my quick thoughts, as well as update you guys all on my Week 1 weekly pick'em record and give you my Week 2 picks. So let's first jump into the Week 1 recap thoughts, stats that were interesting to me, and let's start off with the season opener Lions at Kansas City Chiefs. Just like I called, the Detroit Lions came into Kansas City and, got the job done. The Chiefs were without Travis Kelce. He was eventually ruled, unavailable for that game. But without a doubt, let's not take away or discredit the Detroit Lions and the spectacular performance that they put on. They had a little bit of help, but, you can make all the excuses you want for Kansas City or to say, if this, if that. At the end of the day, the Lions did what they had to do, and they, made the plays when they had to make them. I think the Detroit Lions could be a very scary team this season. Aiden Hutchinson, was a joy to watch the entire game. It's not very often you find yourself, locked in on a singular defensive player for the entire game. I know I for sure watched him every single play before I watched, what the rest of, things were developing. And he's going against the disadvantage there with that offensive right tackle, lining up so far off the ball like he was. What some people may fail to realize is that, he's borderline 1 yard off of the ball. And that gives him, there's an exponential, growth rate to the amount of advantage that the offensive tackle will gain out there on an end like that, playing off the line of scrimmage. By being a yard off of the ball like that, that tackle is gaining, pretty much 3 yards of time and space, and, being able to, sit back there in his pass set and kind of analyze what Hutch is going to do. And that kind of, translates to being able to react and, withhold him. If he's up at the line of scrimmage, it's quick one hit. But every little bit further back you go, it exponentially grows the advantage for the offensive lineman. And that right tackle was still getting his butt kicked almost the entire game. There was a couple holding calls that should have been called on Hutch that, were not called. And Aiden Hutchinson still was able to, get 7 quarterback pressures on Patrick Mahomes. Don't believe he got a sack, but 7 quarterback pressures ties him for second in the league after Week 1. And Aiden Hutchinson very well kept his composure throughout the game. Did not complain to the refs about him lining up as a fullback or a slot receiver like the one announcer made the joke of, or even his false starts that were very, very close to being false starts if the referees are saying that it wasn't. Another thing that happened in the game, very obvious, wide receiver Kadarius Toney for the Kansas City Chiefs. His stat line finished as 1 reception for 1 yard, 1 rush for -1 yards, and 3 drops, one of which turned into a pick 6 by a spectacular one-handed grab by Lions rookie safety Brian Branch out of Alabama. He stopped on a dime, turned one-handed it, and then proceeded to take it all the way back to the end zone. So good play by him. Definitely big plays by all of Detroit's rookies. Brian Branch, like I just mentioned, as well as linebacker Jack Campbell had a nice deflection on a critical, I want to say, second down, late in the game though. And then rookie tight end, Sam Laporta had quite a few catches, especially at good times. I believe he caught all of his targets from quarterback Jared Goff, who has continued his streak that I refuse to comment on right now for his sake, just so that he can hopefully break it in this next game for the Lions, and then I'll discuss it there. But if you know, you know. And then, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown showed what he is capable of. I want to say he finished the game with roughly 80 yards and a touchdown. I didn't write it down, but a good game by him. First NFL touchdown of the season goes to Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now moving on to the Texans versus Ravens game. The Ravens won that one 25-9. For a full in-depth breakdown, please check out yesterday's episode, my Ravens Week 1 recap episode. Ravens offense started out, kind of shaky. Rookie Zay Flowers was the highlight probably. He had, 79 yards, I think. And Roquan Smith on defense doing his thing with 16 tackles. J.K. Dobbins done for the year with a torn Achilles. I would listen to yesterday's episode for more on that one. Falcons versus Panthers was a score of the Falcons 24-10 for the Panthers. Bijan was already doing Bijan things. Spectacular athleticism by B.J. Robinson. Same thing he was doing at Texas, and same thing we saw in the preseason this year. The couple reps that he got there. Bijan had 10 rushes for 56 yards, as well as 6 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. A lot of touches for him, almost 100 yards and a touchdown in his rookie debut. In that touchdown came with a nasty juke move on the Panthers defender there. Quarterback Desmond Ridder was efficient. The Falcons definitely had a game plan to keep the ball on the ground and just be efficient passing when needed. But Ridder went 15 for 18 for 115 yards and 1 touchdown. And then, I mentioned Bijan's stats. The Falcons' other main running back, Tyler Algier, had 15 carries for 75 yards. In his first ever game, his rookie debut, quarterback Bryce Young went 20 for 38, 146 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions on the day. Not the most ideal start, but it's kind of expected with rookie quarterbacks on mediocre to, poor teams. But definitely things to look forward to there with Bryce Young. If you would like C.J. Stroud's stats from the Texans versus Ravens game, once again, check out yesterday's episode. Moving on to the Bengals versus Browns. Wow. If you would have told me that it was going to be a 1-score game and the Browns, edged it out over semi-injured Joe Burrow, and a Bengals offense that didn't play in preseason, I would have said okay. But the Browns absolutely spanked them, and the Browns beat the Bengals 24-3. This was definitely, to me, as a Ravens fan, the biggest eyebrow-raising game of the week in terms of the scoreboard, and, just being the biggest shocker. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, they were basically non-existent. Burrow had 82 yards. I want to say 45 of those were Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins had 0 receptions for 0 yards. They only had the offense there for the Bengals, only had 6 first downs the entire game. Nick Chubb for the Cleveland Browns continued to do his thing on opening day, carrying the ball 18 times for 106 yards. Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson had a meh performance. Nothing kind of really stood out to me from the clips that I saw. The stat line on the day, 16 for 29, 154 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 5 rushes for 45 yards and a rushing touchdown. So a decent performance, obviously. Got the job done against a team that, they were probably projected to lose by, majority of people. Moving on to the 49ers versus Steelers game. The 49ers won 30-7. Brock Purdy, continued right where he left off before he got injured. And I believe Brock Purdy became the first quarterback to win his first 6 regular season games while throwing 2+ passing touchdowns in each of those games. So congrats to him. Brock Purdy definitely looks like a solid, legitimate quarterback after being Mr. Irrelevant. So, that's great for Brock Purdy. Definitely exciting, and, proving everyone wrong about himself. Christian McCaffrey also had himself quite a day, as did the 49ers offense in general. CMC had 22 rushes for 152 yards and a touchdown, as well as 3 receptions for 17 yards. And then 49ers wide receiver Brandon Ayuk had 8 receptions for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. The combination of Purdy, CMC, and Ayuk had themselves a day against the Steelers defense that was, quite frankly, horrendous, except for TJ Watt, who put in his initial bid for Defensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt had 5 tackles, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery. But besides that, the Steelers defense gave up 30 points right there. And second-year quarterback Kenny Pickett had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions on the day. Definitely not, what the Steelers fans or what the Steelers organization was looking for in terms of a sophomore improvement there heading into his second year. Obviously, everything here is week 1. There's no room for overreactions, positive or negative. I truly believe it will take a few weeks to really know what's going on with the players, with teams. But it's definitely interesting, and there's definitely lots of things to keep your eyes on. Moving on to the Cardinals versus Commanders game. Not a whole lot to talk about in this matchup. Sam Howell, who, there's a little bit of quarterback discussion over the offseason for them and who is going to start. Sam Howell got the start. We knew that, long before opening kickoff. But he went 19 for 31, 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception in the 20-16 victory for the Commanders. Sam Howell did, however, he was strip sacked, and that fumble was returned for a touchdown by the Cardinals defense. So a good play for them. Moving to the Buccaneers at Minnesota Vikings game. This one was a shocker to me as well. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the game 22-17. Baker Mayfield, in his return to being a starter, put up quite solid numbers. 21 for 34, 173 yards only, but 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, and the W. So, he did what he needed to do to put his team in a position to win. And so that'll be interesting to see if that is something that Baker Mayfield can maintain. Now, Mike Evans, after not agreeing to a contract extension with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he shut down that negotiation, him and his agent. So this will be Evans' last year as a Buccaneer, unless some sort of miracle happens, which I don't foresee. But Mike Evans has said before it got shut down, that regardless of if they get a deal done or not, Evans is going to go ball out and give it his all for the Buccaneers this season. He started off by doing that this year with 6 receptions for 66 yards and 1 touchdown in their game on Sunday. And then linebacker Devin White for the Buccaneers had 12 tackles, pretty good. And then defensive back Antoine Winfield had 8 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and fumble recovery. So those, good defensive points for them to kind of help out that offense. They're definitely going to need it to kind of help out Baker Mayfield and that offense. Their defense can, help provide a boost by getting some nice plays like that forced fumble and fumble recovery by Winfield. Looking at the Vikings side of the ball for offense, Alexander Madison in his first game as the lead back without running back Dalvin Cook. He had 11 carries for 34 yards and 3 receptions for 10 yards and 1 touchdown. The 11 carries for 34 yards is definitely not ideal, but not horrible. He had a couple catches and a touchdown. So Madison, I wouldn't rule him out yet. And then wide receiver Justin Jefferson continued his stardom with 9 receptions and 150 yards in Sunday's loss to the Buccaneers. And then rookie wide receiver Jordan Addison found himself with 4 catches and 61 yards and his first NFL touchdown. Moving over to the Jaguars versus the Colts game. The Jags won 31-21 over there. Travis Etienne had himself a very nice ball game. 18 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown, and a very nice block on an almost touchdown, but the wide receiver stepped out of bounds. And that wide receiver was Calvin Ridley, who also had himself a day with 8 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown. Almost 2, but he stepped out of bounds by just a slim margin, half a shoe with, Jaguars defensive end Josh Allen had himself a nice day with 10 tackles and 3 sacks. That's the probably lesser known Josh Allen, unless you're a Jaguars fan. And that was good on them for week 1, as their Josh Allen was definitely the better of the two on the weekend. Anthony Richardson made his first start for the Colts there. And he went 24 for 37 with 223 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception through the air, as well as 4 rushing attempts for 40 yards and 1 touchdown. He definitely looks solid. There's definitely some things that he could do better, some things that he needs to work on. He took a couple of unnecessary hits in the open field, one of which towards the end of the game actually knocked him out and forced backup quarterback Gardner Minshew to play. I do think the injury was not serious, and Anthony Richardson should be good to go for week 2. And then also for the Colts, wide receiver Michael Pittman had himself a nice opening day with 8 receptions for 97 yards and 1 touchdown. It'll be interesting to see if Pittman can kind of return to his form from a couple years ago, where he showed a true wide receiver 1 potential. And then linebacker Zaire Franklin from Indianapolis had 18 tackles and a forced fumble. Very good defensive numbers for him. Moving over to the Titans and Saints game. The Titans edged out the Saints 16-15 there. Ryan Tannehill threw 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Definitely not ideal for quarterback Ryan Tannehill, with the interesting quarterback situation in Tennessee. They have Malik Willis still. They traded up to draft Will Levis. It's definitely not a good start for Tannehill if he wants to keep his job this whole year. DeAndre Hopkins, in his first game as a Titan, had 7 receptions for 65 yards. There's some Saints wide receivers had themselves some nice games, with Chris Olave having 8 receptions for 112 yards, and second year receiver as well, Rashid Shaheed had 5 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown. The Raiders versus Broncos game, not much to talk about in this game. Jerry Jeudy did not end up playing. The Raiders won that game 17-16. Jimmy Garoppolo did his thing and game managed, going 20 for 26 with 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. The Dolphins versus Chargers turned into a high-scoring shootout, just like I thought it would, just like I predicted, although I did predict the winner wrong. I thought that Chargers defense, was going to get some pressure on Tua late in the game if it turned into a shootout. And while I'm unsure about the amount of pressure, it wasn't enough as Tua and Tyreek connected a few times on that last drive by the Dolphins to help them get the win 36-34. Tua Tagovailoa had himself a day. 28 for 45 completions, 466 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Tyreek Hill proved why he's a top 3 wide receiver, having 11 receptions for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. Had a nice catch, 30 or 40 yard ish, chunk play on that drive. And then a couple plays later, very nice adjustment on what looked like a good thrown ball, but it was underthrown a little bit, and the defensive back just didn't get his head around. But Tyreek and Tua with the game winner, or go-ahead touchdown there. And then for the Chargers, kind of the brightest spot there was Austin Eckler, who had 16 carries for 117 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground, as well as 4 receptions for 47 yards. And then also, everyone was expecting that Chargers passing attack to kind of be, dominant this year and kind of, be, their primary thing. While Herbert had a solid day, not great, running back Joshua Kelly also had 16 carries for 91 yards and a touchdown. So it was the ground game, to me, that stood out more from this Chargers offense in week 1. One thing that I found interesting, the LA Chargers led the time of possession by about 5 minutes, and still did not get that victory. That's tough to see. The coaching staff to know that you had that many opportunities, and or your defense allowed big chunk plays, that decreases the time of possession for the other team. For that Rams versus Seahawks game last weekend, on Sunday, obviously, the Rams came out ahead 30-13. This one was a bit of a shocker as well, just because, I feel like the Rams probably are not going to have a spectacular season. Things maybe they will after that week 1 performance that they had. We will see, or maybe it just means that the Seahawks have some more work to do than kind of the potential they showed last year. But for the Rams, there was kind of a all around offensive show. Stafford, don't believe had any touchdown passes, but put up pretty decent numbers. He got Tutu Atwell and rookie, I think, undrafted wide receiver Puke Nakua, 119 yards each for them, for Atwell and Nakua. As well as on the ground, running back Kyron Williams had 15 carries for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns, as well as Cam Akers had 22 carries for 29 yards and a touchdown. So a lot of carries for both of them there. Not the most efficient in terms of yards per attempt, but it got the job done and 3 touchdowns out of it. Geno Smith only had 112 passing yards on the day. I believe 77 of those were to wide receiver DK Metcalf. And then Bobby Wagner for the Seahawks again had 19 tackles in his first game back over there. Into that Eagles versus Patriots game, into that Eagles versus Patriots game, the Eagles won that game 25-20. Their offense, and their whole team really kind of looked stagnant or, kind of knocking some rust off as well. Although give some credit to the New England Patriots, who played themselves a very good ball game, definitely played higher than I expected them to, and I would assume that'd be the case for most people. A.J. Brown had 7 receptions for 79 yards, while Devontae Smith had 7 receptions for 47 yards and a touchdown. Darius Slay had a nice pick 6, early on in that game against Mac Jones, who other than that had himself a pretty decent day. Mac Jones went 35 for 54 with 316 yards, 3 touchdowns, and that 1 interception. One of those players that helped Mac Jones, who, if we remember, was the only quarterback kept on the initial 53-man roster for the New England Patriots. He got some help from wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, who had 6 receptions for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. A very good day for him. He hasn't been, one of those receivers that's, talked about a lot or hasn't really showed a ton. It hasn't been bad, but hasn't shown a ton. So it'll be interesting to see if Kendrick Bourne kind of, unveils himself as the Patriots wide receiver. He's definitely off to a good start, and that'll be something to watch, especially for the Patriots and that AFC East division, which kind of got shaken up already after week 1. The Packers versus Bears. The Packers came ahead 38-20 against division rival Chicago Bears. Jordan Love had a decent, Jordan Love had a good first game, or not first game, first game this season, not his first ever. But he went 15 for 27, 245 yards, and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions. So he was very efficient in that regard in taking care of the ball, just kind of taking what was given to him. A couple longer passes on some blown coverages by that Chicago Bears defense. But, he hit it. Those are the ones, the gimmies are the ones that, you have to hit. And he did. He had a nice one to Musgrave that I saw, as well as one down the sideline to Jaden Reed. But Aaron Jones, again, one of the stars of the show for Green Bay, like usual for that Packers team. He had 9 rushes for 41 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown. So a great game by him. And second-year wide receiver Romeo Doubs had, I want to say, 65 yards and 2 touchdowns as well, after Christian Watson was ruled out with a hamstring injury, I believe. And then Quay Walker had himself a very nice pick 6 against Justin Fields. Took a shot, somehow stayed on his feet, continued running, and, was met at the pylon, but he was able to get in for the pick 6. Also, shout out my boy Lucas Van Ness for getting that sack on Justin Fields. Congrats on your first NFL game. I'm almost there. Moving on to the Sunday night football game. The Cowboys at Giants. It was absolutely brutal for the New York Giants. They got spanked 40-0. It was a tough one. Dak Prescott, definition of a mid slash, to be honest, almost poor performance. But he did what they took him, and to be honest, they started running the ball fairly often. Dak had 13 for 24 with 143 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Tony Pollard had 14 rushes for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that Cowboys defense really stomped out the New York Giants offense there. They were, credited for 7 sacks, as well as they had a touchdown on the day. For the New York Giants, newly signed quarterback Daniel Jones. He's been a Giant, but newly signed with the extension for him. With the new deal, He went 15 for 28, 104 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Definitely not ideal for the quarterback that you just paid pretty decent money to. And then Saquon Barkley had 12 carries for 51 yards and no touchdowns. The Giants also led the time of possession by 7 minutes and were unable to even put a single point on the board, and they lost 40-0. That is a little bit shocking to me there. And then last night, as I'm recording this the night before, this will release, Monday Night Football, Bills versus Jets. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles on his 3rd or 4th play of the season. And Aaron Rodgers will be done for the season. Absolutely demoralizing for the Jets fans. Shocking, really. It was just shocking to see that. But the Jets somehow still figured out, I'll tell you part of why they figured it out. But the Jets still won that game 22-16. Quarterback Zach Wilson stepped in and did what he needed to do to get his team in position to win, as well as got some very good help from that dominant Jets defense. But Josh Allen is, one of the main factors why they lost that game. Josh Allen went 29 for 41, 236 yards, 1 touchdown pass, and 3 interceptions, as well as a lost fumble. Stephon Diggs was kind of the only bright spot for the Bills last night, having 10 receptions for 102 yards and 1 touchdown. Diggs doing his thing, showing why he is a top 5 wide receiver. But now moving over to the Jets, Zach Wilson had to step in on the first series of the night for the Jets after the stunning injury by Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson went 14 for 21, 140 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Not bad for being thrown in there like that after, everyone had counted him down and out, got benched. They traded for one of the all-time great quarterbacks, and he came in and, he performed well. He seemed concentrated, locked in, and we're going to see if that continues for the Jets. They have already announced, Wilson's going to be their guy. So that's definitely the shakeup in the AFC East, who, heading into it, looked like it could have been a 3-headed race for the division. And now we're going to see how much, poor performance by the Bills and the Jets now without their star quarterback. Can the Dolphins run away with it? We'll see. Patriots didn't look horrible. Things definitely got a whole lot more interesting in that division after week 1. It was good to see Jets running back Breece Hall back from his ACL injury. He had 10 rushes for 127 yards and 1 reception for 20 yards on Monday Night Football. One of his rushes was for 83 yards, and you could tell he's still just a little bit out of shape, as Eli Manning put it. But, still recovering just a little bit with the conditioning side. The 83-yard rush last season would have been a Breece Hall touchdown, but he got just a little bit tired and, got caught from behind. Garrett Wilson didn't have incredible, stat line, but had the catch of the night, catch of week 1. I would probably say, from what I've seen, potentially may turn into a catch of the year candidate. But he finished with 5 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown reception was thrown on the other side of the defender. Garrett Wilson, with his right hand, kind of deflected it over towards the right side of his body, and then secured the catch as he was falling down. Spectacular play. Look it up if you haven't seen it by now. And that's that. Jordan Whitehead had himself a day. Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions. Jordan Whitehead had all 3 of those interceptions for him. Game went to overtime, where Xavier Gibson walked it off on a punt return for a touchdown. Congratulations to Mr. Gibson, who apparently is an undrafted free agent, who, they got he made the roster. He's one of the last men potentially to make the roster, and the Jets decided they saw something in him, and I'm sure thinking that, they're happy they did. Quarterback Josh Allen is now 0-5 in overtime games through his career. That's definitely interesting. Definitely something to look at for teams. There's a lot more factors than just Josh Allen alone, but if you can go for the win or go for the tie to send to overtime against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, I may be swayed to go for the tie more often than I would against other teams. So, So that's week one, kind of my thoughts on all of the week one games. Just moving into, a couple other things here. Some top threes right now around the league. Top three in passing yards is Tua at 466, Kirk Cousins at 344, and Stafford at 334. In terms of passing touchdowns, three quarterbacks have 3 touchdowns, and that's going to be Jordan Love, Mac Jones, and Tua Tagovailoa. In terms of receiving, for yards, Tyreek Hill is at the top with 215, Justin Jefferson 150, and Brandon Ayuk at 129. 5 players scored 2 receiving touchdowns. That's going to be Jacoby Myers, Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Romeo Doubs, and Kendrick Bourne. On the rushing side of things, for yards, CMC has 152, Breece Hall 127, and Austin Eckler 117. For rushing touchdowns, 4 players scored 2 on the day. That's going to be Kyron Williams, Tyler Algier, Justice Hill, and Tony Pollard. And then on the defensive side, for tackles, Bobby Wagner leads with 19. We got Zaire Franklin with 18, and Roquan Smith with 16. Sacks, 3 players had 3. That's going to be Drake Jackson, TJ Watt, and Jaguars' Josh Allen. And then in terms of interceptions, Jordan Whitehead had 3, Jesse Bates had 2, and, some players had 1. I'm not going to name them all. Now it's time for the him performance of the week. Each week I'm picking the him performance of the week around the league. This can be, offense, defense. It's going to be, that guy. It's going to be the guy who showed, the toughest, meanest, coolest, most productive stat line of the week. Some players here that, were tossed around in discussion this week amongst, myself and, a couple of my peers. But some names that I looked into for him performance of the week. One was Brandon Ayuk, Aaron Jones, TJ Watt, Austin Eckler, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Whitehead, and Xavier Gibson. And your week one him performance of the week goes to wide receiver Tyreek Hill for the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill put up 11 receptions, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. One of them being the go-ahead to help his team secure the win over the Los Angeles Chargers. Tyreek Hill currently leads the league in both yards and tied for the league in touchdowns. Now moving on to a little bit of a week 2 preview. I'm not going to go too in-depth as this episode is already getting long. And frankly, I don't believe that everyone's going to listen to every single game's breakdown, nor do I have time necessarily to spend 15, 20 minutes to fully look into every single game. So I'm going to just give you my initial thoughts, a couple things I'm looking at, a couple things that potentially could help a team win the game or could lose the game for them, if they get exposed with it. So here we go. Thursday night football this week is Vikings at Eagles. I do expect the Eagles offense to kind of turn it up a little bit. I would think that defense is going to show, kind of their dominance again. But Vikings offense might show out. It potentially will be a high-scoring game in which I will, I'll give you my picks all at the end. But don't be surprised if it's a mid to higher scoring game there in Philadelphia. Seahawks at Lions. Seattle's offense, if they want to have a shot this season, to contend there, they're going to have to turn their offense up a notch. 112 yards by Geno Smith is not going to be enough, especially when you have the receiving trio of DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and JSN. The Detroit Lions are looking to extend, get a second win of the season. Who knows, the last time they started 2-0 on a season. A lot of good buzz around Detroit. I think that, it's worthy. I think the Lions are legitimate this year. But, it's only week 1. This will be week 2. But we'll definitely know how legit the Lions are, come about a month from now. Ravens at Bengals. If you listen to my episode from yesterday, I give a little bit of insight on how that Ravens team can beat the Bengals. The Bengals allowed over 200 rushing yards. I know the Ravens lost J.K. Dobbins, but they still have, the three-headed beast back there with Lamar, Gus the Bus, and Justice Hill, who I think is underappreciated or underknown in terms of his skill set. If the Ravens want to win, they got to start with the run first, and that'll lead to open up. Hopefully Mark Andrews plays, but even without Andrews, if they can establish the run early, that will only, piss off the Bengals defense, thinking, here we go again. And then as soon as they put, extra guys in the box to stop that run, to stop Lamar, we got weapons finally. Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman looks nice. That's going to be the Ravens' key to win. Expect the Bengals offense to be more productive than they were. That's not going to be the new normal, I don't think. Bears at Buccaneers. This is going to be, Bears fans were very optimistic about how their season is going to look. This will kind of, being down in an 0-2 hole is not going to be good for the Bears, in kind of their history of, winning crucial or clutch games. Could come back and hurt them later on in the season if they start out in that 0-2 hole. Buccaneers, it's going to be interesting to see if Baker Mayfield can kind of continue the success he had week 1. Packers at Falcons. This is an interesting one. I think this is going to be a very close game. Both these teams won in week 1, but they didn't play, spectacular teams, and nor did either one of them have spectacular performances. Packers fans will probably disagree with me that they didn't have a spectacular game. I get it, you beat your rival. But I don't think the Packers, showed dominance in that game. A couple busted coverages. The Bears probably aren't going to be that great this year. And then Atlanta, Bijan, he's going to do his thing again. And we could be seeing the emergence of running back Tyler Algier. Colts at Texans. It's going to be the first rookie versus rookie quarterback matchup of the season. We're going to see if, which one comes out on top. It's definitely going to be fun. I know the media is going to be all over it. Rookie versus rookie. Chargers at Titans. That Titans team looked very stagnant, very poor. Poor execution. Derrick Henry only had like 60 rushing yards. And the Chargers are going to be coming back. They're going to be coming back with, some effort, some energy. I would imagine that they're pretty upset that they let that one slip away against the Dolphins last week. Raiders at Bills. Same thing there. The Bills, look for them to be locked in against the Raiders team that, scrappily found a W against the Denver Broncos. The Bills offense, I would expect Josh Allen to not have 4 turnovers again. Although he has quite a few turnovers in his career, which it kind of seems like from what I watched on TV today, that the media is finally going after Josh Allen a little bit for that, which is good to see. Not because I'm hating on Josh Allen, but because Lamar Jackson is better than Josh Allen. But everyone always talks about Lamar's interceptions or Lamar's fumbles, but not Josh Allen's as much. Looks like that might be changing. So that'll be good. Plus some respect on the Lamar versus Josh Allen debate. Go listen to my top 5 quarterbacks episode if you want to hear more of my thoughts in that situation. Chiefs at Jaguars. This is going to be an interesting one there. Kansas City, I think they had 7 drops against the Lions. Mahomes, I would assume Mahomes is trying to do Mahomes things. I'm sure he's pissed off at the performance of some of his receivers, although he might not be showing it. Expect Travis Kelce to play. I haven't seen anything at this point saying that he won't. And the Jaguars, this can be a test of Trevor Lawrence and, kind of their offense that looked very good against the Colts. It's going to kind of be a test of what they can do this season truly. Chris Jones will be back. He agreed to a revised 1-year, revised salary for this season, not an extension, but from the looks of it, they put in a lot of incentives that Chris Jones, was satisfied with in trying to obtain there. Then we got the 49ers at Rams. This is always a good, tight divisional game. We'll see if that's the case again. That 49ers offense looked very good. So did that Rams offense. We're going to see which one comes out on top. These two always have tight battles. So it'll probably be a good divisional game to watch. The Giants at Cardinals. Giants, I would like to get some revenge. Expect them to score some points against a, very underwhelming, probably one of the worser teams that are one of the teams that's going to be, towards the bottom this year in the Arizona Cardinals. Jets at Cowboys. That's going to be an interesting one. That Cowboys defense looked incredible against the Giants. Their offense had a couple of things to improve on, especially in the passing side of the game. And that Jets, the Jets defense also looks solid. But, now it's going to be Zach Wilson. And the Cowboys are going to be able to prepare for Zach Wilson instead of Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be a big difference. The Jets, they caught a tough break there. So we're going to see, kind of what their season looks like from here on out. Commanders are at the Broncos. Not much to really say here. One of them has to, win. I think they're both mid teams. Who's going to step up? Is Russell Wilson going to finally, show that he can maybe turn this thing back around? Or is Sam Howell going to help show, everyone that he could potentially be their guy, their next guy? So we'll see how that goes. Sunday Night Football, Dolphins at Patriots. It's going to be fun to see if that Dolphins offense can put up the kind of numbers that they did week 1. As well as I'm going to be interested to see Mac Jones, and see if he can, have another good game. That was kind of been his problem, is consistency. He'll have one good game, one bad game, Just be interesting to see if maybe he can get some more consistency there for him. And then we got doubleheader on Monday Night Football this week. First one is Saints at Panthers, another divisional game. Quite a few division games this week. Week 2 of the NFL season. Derek Carr versus Bryce Young. It's going to be interesting. And then Browns at Steelers. I'm sure the Steelers are going to be, coming back swinging. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Browns team, is more legit than I thought they would be, or if they just got lucky. I would definitely expect them to feed Nick Chubb again. And that Steelers defense is going to have to step up to stop him because TJ Watt cannot do it all. And Browns offensive tackle Jack Conklin, I believe, tore his ACL, and he will be done for the season for the Browns. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's any sort of offensive line drop-off, with their backup situation there. So now it's time for me to make my Week 2 picks. Week 1, I went 9-7. Not horrible. I was hoping for a couple games better, but 9-7. After Week 1, I'll take that. These first few weeks are probably going to be a little bit harder to judge. But 9-7 after Week 1. Here we go with my Week 2 picks. I'm taking the Eagles over the Vikings, the Lions over the Seahawks. I got the Ravens over the Bengals. That would be huge for them. The Bears are going to lose to the Buccaneers. So I butchered that one. Bucks winning that. Packers over the Falcons. Colts over Texans. Chargers over Titans. Bills over Raiders. Chiefs over Jags. 49ers over Rams. Giants over the Cardinals. Cowboys over the Jets. Broncos over the Commanders. Dolphins over the Patriots. Saints over the Panthers. And I think the Browns will edge out the Steelers. That's all I have for this episode of the Wedge 52 Gridiron podcast. If you guys made it this far, I greatly appreciate it. Make sure you smash that follow button. Rate the podcast. Not only does that help the podcast grow, helps me grow motivation, helps me know that you guys are liking the content, as well as check out my Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron, where the hidden performance of the week will be posted, as well as, game day graphics and podcast graphics. If you guys don't know, it's because you aren't following it yet. Thank you all for listening. Wedge52Gridiron here, signing off, and go Ravens.